Coming up on today's episode, I'll discuss a bit about my brief brush up with flow state this past week, discussing what I felt during it and what I was doing while I got into this flow state. I'll then talk a bit about the concept of hacking, discuss some of my ideas and thoughts about that after finishing an article, as well as what the real MVP of productivity and progress are. Up next on Themindhere. Hey, what is up everyone? It's Theguyhere and welcome back to another episode of Themindhere, the bi-weekly podcast where I talk about new knowledge I learned, projects I'm working on, and current events. Topics may be random, but I hope that with each episode you can come away with a fresh perspective on the universe. Welcome to all of you who are here for the first time. If you like my content and want to see more, please consider subscribing. Alright, so before we begin this episode, I want to touch a bit about some changes I'm making to Themindhere, and that's the overall structure of these podcast episodes. What I've done previously was just have an intro where I briefly talk about what I will talk about during the body of the episode, then go on with whatever I want in the body, and then finish off with the outro. But I thought that I wanted to make this a little more structured, a little more routine, and also make the ideas that I come out with, the ideas that I'm presenting, a bit more digestible. And so I'm breaking the body of the podcast down into three different parts. The first part that I'll go in, and this will be in chronological order, will be the breakthroughs I had throughout the week. So these will be any ideas that went through suddenly that I thought, oh, hey, this might be something important that other people might find interesting. So breakthroughs, those are the first category, the first section that I'll go into. The second section will be reflections. So some thoughts about what I've been doing throughout the week, maybe progress and improvements I could make, or various things like that. And last but not least, I have the calling shots section. So this is where I'll be calling out what I will be doing and what visible progress you might look forward to see if you are following my content. This is sort of a way to keep myself accountable, but also something that is I'll talk about a bit in the podcast, but is an important tool to get progress and get what I want to get done. But anyways, that's it for the structure of the episode. Let's go into the actual content for this episode. All right, to start off the episode, we're going to talk a bit about the flow state that I briefly brushed up with. So what I was doing with this. So during what I was doing was when I was, I take some time out of each day, or at least I've been trying to take some time out of each day to go through the backlog of articles that I've saved or YouTube videos that I've bookmarked as I want to come back to later because it's something educational, but I don't want to break out a notepad right now or use my life operating system to take notes or whatever. Just archived media where I want to come back to later to really digest the information and gain something important out of. So periodically I'd come back and watch or read articles, and I was doing this at one point, and I realized that the article talked a bit about flow state, so this is what got me that meta thinking of, oh hey, am I in a flow state right now? Because usually when you're in that sort of flow state, and what is flow state? Flow state is a state of mind where you are hyper-focused on a complex task, something that might be requiring creativity or a hard problem you're solving, something like that. So usually when you're solving that problem or when you're working on that, you're not really thinking about, oh, hey, I'm in a state of mind in which is pretty rare, but is super useful in these complex tasks. But because of the nature of the work I was doing, I was taking notes on an article and digesting, reading it, making connections, taking notes, all of that, because the article brought up flow states. That sort of led me to the ability to sort of meta-analyze myself without breaking out of that flow state, because I've realized that I was in this state. So that's what I was doing when I reached it. But how did I feel about it, and some thoughts about it? Well, the first thing I noticed when I was in this flow state was that a lot of ideas were floating around. Whenever I was reading a sentence or taking down notes, other ideas would immediately pop up, and I found that my typing speed was really quite slow. And usually that's not the case. My typing speed is good enough that that usually it's my thoughts that hold me back, and my fingers just type out whatever I'm thinking, or usually deleting whatever I was thinking and wasn't good enough. But during this flow state, it was as if there was a flood of information, flood of ideas that I wanted to get down, and my typing speed just wasn't up to handle it. And that's something that I realized, oh, hey, usually I have a bottleneck that's up here where my thoughts are the ones that are slow, but now it's the fidelity of the way I'm keeping track of these thoughts that's being slow. So that's something that I realized was a bit different in this flow state, is when all these ideas are connecting, and I have a lot of ideas that I might want to archive. And I also noticed that because I have a lot of these ideas connecting, a good chunk of these ideas are missed. Right. A lot of these might be even erroneous ideas, something that comes up and I'm like, oh, hey, is this something that's worth doing? And then after maybe a few seconds of analysis and thinking over it, be like, nah, okay, that won't work, and I'll pass up on it. But there are a lot of ideas that float up, and most of them don't happen to make it. But there are, during these states, when I'm actually taking notes and writing things down, I find that I capture a lot more ideas than I would have if I just, were reading this article alone, or reading something, watching this video alone, whatever, and not taking notes. Because I consider my memory to not be that great, especially with most temporary things. Maybe long-term memory with certain events might be better, but with something like what I've read in an article, if I don't write things down, I will, by the next day, for the most part, have forgotten most of the lessons that are not that have not become an integral part of my routine or how I accomplish things. So I sort of need to write notes down. So when I do that in a flow state, even though a lot of ideas are swarming around and I'm not typing fast enough to get all of them, I'm able to capture a good chunk more than if I weren't. So that's something that I learned that is important and might be worth doing, maybe even just bringing out reminders on my phone or something like that, just to keep track of a few ideas, something like that, where I can come back to later and maybe jog some memory about ideas that may or may not work. And I've done that a few times, where I've put down in a quick place some ideas that I've initially had, and a good chunk of those I've just tossed off to the side as, okay, those are things I had in the moment, but looking back, it probably wasn't great. A few of them actually have made the cut and made improvements that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to do. So that's something to keep in mind there. And last but not least, I was able to find out that when I'm in this flow state, I rarely pay attention to the environment. When maybe the AC is going off, for the most part, sometimes I would, if I'm not focused, I'd notice it going off, and then I'd spend a few minutes being distracted by the sound of the AC, maybe the temperature I'm feeling, going into the weather, or why the AC is like that, or something else that's completely tangential to what the task I have on hand is. But in that flow state that I was in, I found that for the most part, anything that I was doing, I'd maybe briefly glance at any changes in the environment, which I mean is pretty crucial. If something's burning, then I kind of want to break out of that flow state. But for the most part, I acknowledge it and then swiftly move on with what I'm doing. It's quite magical, actually, because for the most part, usually when I'm not in this state, I get distracted quite easily. I pay attention to a lot of small details, or I get pulled away with a lot of small details. So in that flow state, that wasn't happening. So it's quite a magical feeling that I felt. And this was all because I was reading an article, and this article was a fantastic article that was very thought-provoking. And because of all the connections, ideas I was forming, and all the notes I was taking down, I developed and entered a flow state. So speaking of this article, that's the that's going to be the bulk of the next portion of this podcast episode, in where I'm talking about a bit about the concept of hacking and the misconceptions of this. And this all comes from an article I talked a bit about in a past episode called "The Power of the Marginals" by Paul Graham. Last time I talked about the first portion of it, and it did take a while for me to find the motivation and find the time to finish up this article and get back into this routine of clearing out all these archived, or not archived, but saved up articles and media that I wanted to go through. But I did finish this article, and the second portion of it was equally as insightful, if not more, than the first portion. So what I want to talk about is about hacking. And Paul Graham defines or looks at hacking as coming up with how you do things when you're doing them. So a good example of this would be maybe you're going on a vacation and you want to drive, but you don't know where. So as you're driving, you're figuring out the destination. That would sort of be hacking your vacation or your road trip. If you're cooking, you just decide, hey, I want to cook. I don't know what I have, but I'll take a look, find out, and make a recipe out of it, right? So you want to cook, you don't know exactly what, but you know you want to do this. So then as you're doing it, you're figuring out where you want to go, which is sort of contrary to what I think most workplace environments encourage. They encourage following step procedures and making sure that you get you follow a step of procedures and ensure success through that. So this is sort of frowned upon, I guess. But it's different from, I think, what most people would consider or maybe think of initially when the term hacking comes up, right? I think it has a more negative connotation where you're working around something or you're doing something nefarious. You're bypassing security systems, right? That's what you think about when you're thinking of hacking. The hackers, when you think of hackers, you're thinking of someone that has malicious intent going into some digital server to get information and put spyware, malware in there, etc. Right? But hacking in this term, I think, is it's a misconception that the negative connotation, I think, is a misconception of it and misses the important part of what hacking actually is when we're talking about putting things together as we go. And why I think this is important is because, for the most part, a lot of good things, a lot of innovation, and a lot of breakthroughs that happen go through this cycle of coming up, deciding, okay, I want to do something, but I don't maybe know exactly where I want to go, or maybe you do, but when you're doing it, you realize maybe I could take a better route, right? So as you're doing it, you're figuring out where to go, how you're going to do it. You don't have this step-by-step procedure you're following. If you're going through a list as maybe a technician assembling something, that's not hacking. If you're hacking, you're probably going to get fired because you're not following the procedures, especially with something that's in an industry that cares about standards a little more, right? But if you're maybe engineering something, or you're thinking of ideas, you're doing some artwork, for example, oftentimes you have maybe a sketch of what you want to do, constraints that you have to follow, or maybe some guidelines that someone imposes on you or you impose on yourself. But oftentimes you don't really know the exact means you'll do it with, or maybe even the final product sometimes. So that's something where I think is important, where hacking shouldn't be considered as something just relevant to in the computer science realm, but an overall term encompassing the creative this creative work of just doing actions and figuring out how and where you want to go as you're doing them. And relating this back to hackathons, again, one of the more intimidating things about hackathons when people hear about them, or at least I did before I attended one and understood better about it, was that this was a competition, a high stakes competition, where people with intense and very skilled at technical, with computer skills, are coming together to try to break into some server or get something up and running, something super complex, and just something straight out of Hollywood, basically, right? But clearly that's not the case. And a hackathon is really about a quick thinking and making do with what you have right now, right? The whole spirit of it is that, okay, we give you maybe a theme beforehand, but pretty much nothing else, and say, okay, here are the problems, or okay, here's what you have. You have a short period of time to work on the problem. And whatever goes. So you have a short period of time, and this is the only time you can work on it, right? So whatever you have there and then, you have to do now. You can maybe do a little bit of learning, a little bit of reading, but whatever you have there, you just have to go with it. And that's sort of the spirit of hacking, where you might have an idea of where you want to go, or maybe you don't, and you're just doing things. But as you're doing it, you find where and how you want to go. So that's something important that I learned about the article. And if you're interested in this article, I will link the article down in the description of the video, as well as the podcast, the audio version of the podcast. So those are my thoughts on the conception of hacking. And another idea that came up while I was reading this article was in the similar realm, but more of the productivity and progress side, and that's the real MVP. And when I mean MVP here, some people might know that I'm not referring to most valuable player or most valuable person, but I'm referring to minimum viable product, which doesn't seem that great. But what I'm talking about is fast iteration cycles. How do these things connect? Minimum viable product, and fast iteration cycles. Well, I found, reading through the article, actually, I didn't find, but I realized that while reading through, I agreed with what the author had to say about it, was that the most effective way to progress and to learn and to be productive in a creative sense is to go through fast iteration cycles of whatever you're doing and bring out the minimum viable product from the start, starting with the minimum viable product and then building more features from there, which is sort of a more software approach to handling projects, where you have a minimum product that's sort of the basic, the alpha beta version, and then you add more features to it as you go through software releases and updates, etc. But why this is important? Because oftentimes if we start with something that's really big and we want to deliver something pretty much feature complete right out the box, it's a lot more difficult, and you can get more discouraged with it as your deadlines slip and things become even more improbable as you progress and you hit some of the roadblocks that maybe you haven't foreseen before. So these fast iteration cycles allow you to learn and reflect quicker and quicker. Each iteration cycle is an opportunity to improve on various techniques. But if you only have one massive iteration cycle, then you're not going to have a lot of those repeat processes to reflect and improve on. And you won't feel like you're making any progress because you're not getting through certain milestones. Maybe you have built-in milestones in a sort of waterfall in terms of, that's project management speak, but it's in a traditional project where you have certain milestones to hit during this long period of time before a release. But it's not the same as maybe each release or each time you finish a smaller project. For example, if you're practicing art, instead of this huge masterpiece, this mural you want to paint, or this incredible artwork, maybe just starting out with a few sketches and posting them on Instagram, and then a few more sketches. Maybe you're practicing perspective here, or maybe you're practicing drawing the ears and posting that. Each of these cycles, you're learning a bit about how you're drawing, the various technical skills, and maybe getting some feedback each time. And every time you post something, it actually feels like you've accomplished something, rather than maybe you do practice that, but you just keep it away in a drawer somewhere, and you keep doing that and keep waiting until you've got this final product. The wait is often going to kill the project. And oftentimes with things, with the fast iteration cycles that you're going through, and when you're trying to learn something, the final product sometimes might not be the most valuable result. Sure, maybe you want to deliver something good, but when you're going through these fast iteration cycles, and this also ties in with hacking in the sense that when you're putting things together as you go, most often you're not doing this in a production format where you're doing this repeatedly to get something reliable out, because at that point you probably do want to have a procedure and a robust way to get things done, not hacking your way through, right? But when you're coming up with something new, it's often the experience and the learning itself that is more important than what you actually produce. So maybe you're writing your first track, or maybe you're making music for a video game, and this is your first time doing this for something that'll be released to a wider audience. So maybe the first few tracks that come out while you're doing it, right? So instead of maybe waiting until the end and everything's released, maybe you have your own place to share your music, and as you go, you share maybe the first one that comes out and see what people think, the second one, and sort of go through these faster iteration cycles. Instead of waiting for the whole album, maybe you release a few pieces at a time, or maybe even just a few sections of songs at a time, right? So faster iteration cycles. These allow you to improve more quickly, and it's a great way to keep momentum building, because oftentimes there's this sort of dead zone within, especially larger projects, where there's no motivation to continue, where you're good way through, but you also don't have a clear incentive to quickly finish it, and you've sort of burned out that initial momentum and sort of joy for the project, or sort of passion for it, but it's not that deadline approaching kind of adrenaline to get you through. So keep that in mind when you're maybe taking on a creative endeavor, or you're learning something new. MVP, minimum viable product, to get out first is something important, and something that I learned, I wish I learned before, or I wish I applied to this and knew about before, was the Life OS system that sort of fell apart about maybe a month ago-ish, and I've put back together. Throughout this entire time, I've sort of just been putting it on hold in construction, and therefore made an excuse to not use it, which was a terrible excuse, but I went with it nonetheless, because I was convinced myself, oh, hey, I'm working on it, so I can't really use it yet. But what would have helped was if I was using the minimum viable product strategy and putting out something workable out first, and saying, okay, hey, I have something that's workable for now, we're going to use it, and every time I come back and improve it, it's going to be something new, but we're not going to have any lapse in time of when I'm actually using my Life OS system. So rapid iterations instead of a long period of time under construction. So that's something that I wish I knew about, but this article brought up, and I thought was an important idea that was a great breakthrough to share about. Now, speaking of Life OS and productivity, I've got to say this week, the past 2 weeks were a bit of a roller coaster. The first week, I think I was a lot more productive, as that was the week I pretty much finished up my Life OS system in its current working state and got started on some projects. I was feeling good that I was starting to get somewhere with a few of these projects, and I had some potential going. The second week, something died down a little bit. Maybe it was after the initial success, quickly said, okay, hey, let me take some time off and do things that weren't really going to benefit me in the future. It was momentum killing, basically. I said, oh, hey, it was a good run. Now let me decay a little bit and come back again, which maybe it's just a habit I have, but it's something that I don't really want to do. I got into a game called, well, it's a Minecraft mod, a mod pack called Terra Firma Rescue. I probably will delegate this into more of the streaming realm to keep myself from dumping enormous amounts of time on it on my own. But I tend to enjoy these sort of ultra realistic, hardcore Minecraft mods. But anyway, so there's some progress and reflections on what I did this week. The first week was a bit of more of, I guess, a summer season where I was able to, get more routinely exercises, get better sleep, and finish up my LifeOS system. Everything felt good. It was going somewhere. And then next week, I ran into a bit of a rough patch. A winter came, and it didn't feel too great. Even as I'm recording this now, it's quite late. It's basically 9:30 at this point, and then I have to edit and post it out. By this time, most people will probably be on tomorrow in terms of time, because I'm currently on Pacific Daylight Time or Mountain Standard Time. In Arizona, they don't do that time zone changing, so it's perpetually in MST time. But it's a bit of a a show of what has happened throughout the week and a bit of a progress there. I'm not proud of it, but I also recognize that beating myself down for failures isn't going to work. And I did come across this thing where someone talked about rebranding this failure from most things. Failure is when they consider failure when you don't even try. That's when you have failed at something. But when you try and you fall, they like using the term fall, right? When a child is riding a bike and they fall, you don't say you failed. No, you fell, get back up and try again, right? So the idea of falling and maybe running into rough patches, not doing so well at some point is okay, is something that's okay and inherently human, and that's fine. But we can pick ourselves up. Right. So that's what I'm taking away with this week. And so that's the mindset that I'll be going forward with. But I do have to, sort of be transparent with how I felt. I did have a good week, and then I had a bad week. Hopefully, I will make a better week and be a better version of myself the past few episodes, and share with you guys something maybe more inspiring or just better content overall. So that's sort of a reflection of what I had going on since the last episode. So last but not least of these sections, we now have the new calling shots out section. So next week, I don't plan on having much visible progress. What I do plan on doing is sort of repeating that first week I had since last episode, where I talked about I was getting my schedule back together. I want to repeat that. Get my schedule back together, follow it thoroughly, do exercises more consistently, and get better sleep. So those are some things that I want to achieve there, as well as getting my personal website up and refined. I do have it up, but it's not updated. It's been maybe like 8 months since it's been updated. Some things haven't changed, but a lot of things could use some refreshing. So that's something that I will be working on, and I will finish this by next week. But starting the week after, this is where some more visible progress might come into play. I want to have my streaming, I want to execute on that streaming schedule that I talked about last episode. I think last episode, it might have been even the episode before, but I want to start streaming Tuesday, Thursday, maybe Saturday. That was Saturday. Yeah, maybe Saturday. And it'll be mostly gaming for the most part until I gain a wider audience that might enjoy me working on projects or just talking while I work away at certain things. So for now, that's what it will be at, but I want to refine some digital assets and make sure everything's refined and ready for streaming, and just start doing it and hacking away at things. As I do it, I'll find out what works best and find out what destination I would like to head for. So those are some ideas, and I'm also working on the Minecraft plugin called Villager Defense, but I don't foresee any maybe update videos or anything like that, anything that's really going to have any visible impact. But I am working on final debugging and getting that production version out. It's been a project that's been super delayed, like a good number of, it's basically been a government project at this point, super delayed, over schedule, past schedule, over budget, But it's something that I'm certainly still proud of. So when I have better updates and more visible updates, I will definitely tell you about it. If you want to see updates of different sorts, I have the social media that I use most often to notify people of smaller things besides these podcast episodes is Instagram. So if you want to head out and check that out on YouTube, there should be a social bar. You can head to Instagram, or if you just search up Theguyhere YT, that's my Instagram tag. That's you should be able to find me and that logo of me there. But anyways, that will wrap it up for this episode. So thank you all so much for watching or listening to this episode. I appreciate all the support you all have given me throughout this process. If you found this episode or this series to be insightful, if you think someone else might benefit from it or might enjoy listening to it, consider liking this video or sharing this video with people that you know. Consider subscribing if you think that I'm someone that's might be worth someone else's time to listen or to watch. But anyways, that's it. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below the YouTube video for this episode. Take care, stay humble, and I will see you all in the next episode.